a destined message to ultimately express. Many beings here actually came here to safely vent. That does have a great deal of sense, doesn't it? After all, if this earth was perfect, as it should be, your place here in your time of great need to vent a certain message would be of an awkward timing, yes? Thus those who are here on earth, their position of who they are and what potentials reflected in who they are as a being, representing and reflecting determines their persona, whether it's their actual persona or a persona evolving. Most can realize when someone is improving. So with this said, I think you all can understand the beauty of your music. Just try and find a way to use your retributions in a way that creates the doorways of evolution. Evolution is a word that lusts with, and for always think about that for a moment. Um, this is where I come back onto the official transcript, which I was reading from the official transcript, but that was to the groups, but very relevant. To lust for evolution would mean to climax into so many ways of thinking and expressing. You be in absolutions that are climaxing itself. Example, a concert, oh, okay, I'm still talking about the bands. A concert you put out that was not just a sellout, but a joy, a pleasure, yes? That created a greatness within you, that created fulfillments. These are gifts. Dark Family has plenty. Okay, I sum it up here. By the way, family, that term is used because of their very close relations. That is the true meaning of family, not whom is related to you by blood, but by being. We aren't strangers to each other. We are beings. To coexist serves. Okay. To coexist serves the whole issue of who deserves respect. Conflicts themselves, etc. To I have to reread this. To coexist serves. Okay. I guess what I'm saying is to coexist. Okay, I'm basically saying what it means not to coexist, which we've gone over that so many times. Okay. Let me explain a bit about evil, and as far as him sitting down all the time. For one thing, to even have a throne, he's definitely an ultimate being, that's for sure. Everyone I mentioned is an ultimate being here. There's not many of the dark, though. It's extremely difficult to take a quasar amount of energy multiplied by a nebula of a fourth density planetary slash star system like Pleiades and compress it into a being form, which to compress that amount of energy and quantifications, which means each oh man, this math is insane. Which means the more it's compressed, at some point an inch of compression, which that amount of space would take a long time to compress, but I'll just sum it up with this. And eventually an inch of compression would be the entire quantification itself times 2, and then at some other point a millimeter, or yeah, millimeter at some point would be the entire quantification of the potential of the compression. So I guess you can understand why evil sits in a throne. He does not get up from this throne. Okay. First off, this is extremely symbolic. The whole idea of evil's a force. That person's evil. Okay, first off, let's start with the force part. It's not a force. You have to act on something to make another being react. And as far as let's see, as far as someone else being evil, it's the same thing. It's the way they're being, and they're not evil. It's the way they're being. The government's not evil. It's the way they're being. No matter which way you look at it, it's the way they're being. And choice and selectivism. Choice, to choose is to say that to whom this applies to, is to say that you want to, you think you're ready to choose. Literally choose when eternity exists. Eternal existence exists, eternal spectrum, synchronicity, irony, other exist. I mean, that's the actuality. It's basically to say you can choose is to say that you know everything pretty much. It's to say that you know the actuality, you know the eternal spectrum itself, you know mystery itself, you know ultimatism itself. Choice is no one chooses. I think the only person that actually chooses, very few, and they're the ultimate beings, and the only real choices they make are highly simplistic, but keeping the symbolism alive. Who would want to know everything? And also, it's not possible. Um, to say that, let's just throw a what if out there. Only in unnatural circumstances would I do what ifs, but let's throw some what ifs out there. I'll give you some more angles to work with. Because this is, quote, controversial. Although I think if anyone's gotten this far, they're interested, which is good. Let's throw this what if out there. Let's just say that you could know everything. Well, if you could know everything, at some point, everything would be nothing. Because you'd have already used and wore thin all of its examples and possibilities and potentials. And at some point, it would get as boring as a blank sheet of paper. It would probably take a very long time, but at some point, it would become that. And then to be alive would actually be pointless. No one can know anything or everything. Now the eternal spectrum's different, but it's that's to say that it's real-time documenting and discerning absolutely everything. But time is eternal and eternities are eternal. So though it knows everything at that moment, it doesn't know what's going to happen in the next second, though it's eternal in its ways of defining realistic potential angles, which is actually a fairly good way of summing up the eternal spectrum. But believe me, the eternal spectrum is baffling enough for me to try and quantify. Though that was a pretty fair sum, but believe me, the process is. If you saw the eternal spectrum for yourself, which I think I have a few times, you might want to look away because the amount of information going on is ballistic. Very ballistic, very intense, very graphic. Mystery, oh gosh, it's almost a phantom effect. Mystery is mystery. Symbolic as well. So, Lady Surprise presents herself here. Life, for some, every day they wake up, is as though to awake for maybe not the first time being alive, but each day seems like a new experience in that existence they are in. For me, it is that way, but I honestly can't live fulfillingly because I live in conditions that are quite predictable. But me, I live in the actuality. It's different. I don't acknowledge what's around me. I acknowledge the actuality. And to interact with the actuality, which is quite difficult. It will take you some time to understand how to interact in the hybrid existence. When you do learn how to interact, you will understand why evil sits on a throne and he never rises.